running to a lawyer about a divorce is kind of like asking a physician about assisted suicide. Now that sounds kind of weird. So let me
That does sound weird.
let me unpack that. When you reach a stage of life where you're considering that you can't endure the pain, a lot of times what people do is they turn to a physician about ending their life.
Mm-hmm.
But ending your life is, in many respects, a spiritual issue, not a medical issue. A chiropractor could end your life, but
your spouse can end your life.
there you go. Right.
That's what popped in my head.
The wider implications of that decision, your physician can't really help with that.
Right.
But a pastor could help you with that, or
right.
a spiritual advisor.
Right.
In other words, you're turning to a medical practitioner, essentially a technician,
right,
for something that requires a philosopher.
Right.
And the same thing is true with lawyers in divorce.
I think I agree with that wholeheartedly.
Divorces have two parallel tracks. On the one hand, there's the legal part, which I'm an expert in. And the other track is the emotional piece, which has to do with your family relationships mostly, your relationships to your children. And for my money, that's what's important. But your average lawyer can't really advise you.
But your divorce coach can.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Well, to me, that's the difference. That's a lot of the difference between the lawyer and the divorce coach is, and I think if you have a good experienced divorce coach that has some legal background, like with having been, your paralegal for a long time and stuff like that, that helps a lot when you have somebody that's come from the profession, because they can not only help you with your life strategy, but make sure that your life strategy works in concert with your legal strategy.
Or that your legal strategy works in concert with your life strategy.
Either one. But a lot of times what happens is you have somebody that has a lawyer and they have this legal strategy, and the client's trying to follow the legal strategy, but in the meantime, nothing in their life is going the way they want it to.
Right.
Everything's like falling apart, and they can't figure out why. And right. Why it's like trying to pick up, confetti off the floor. It's like you can't, it's like there's too much. And so what you have to do is try to align those two processes.
It's like asking a fireman where you should put the doors in your house.
Right.
Well, the fireman's main concern is getting out of the house in case of a fire.
Right.
So his door placement is going to have nothing to do with how your house looks,
right.
how the traffic through it flows, what the rooms are being used for.
Right.
It's going to be all about how do I get out of here fast if my house catches on fire.
Right.
And that's the way lawyers are. Lawyers all think this way.
Right. When that divorce is happening, it's your entire life, right? It hits you everywhere. I mean, right. It hit me physically. I lost a bunch of weight in a very short period of time, the divorce diet, as we like to call it.
Yeah.
And I was emotionally a wreck. Financially, everything was going to heck in a handbasket, just the whole thing, and so it, physically, emotionally, financially, it's just everything's ripping apart. And so when we go in and we get this legal strategy, or we talk to a lawyer, or whatever happens, that legal piece of it, although it feels like your entire world, it's kind of like if you can remember being in high school and you felt like high school was your entire world until you became an adult and got married and had kids. And then you're like, wow, that was just like a blip on the radar. It was nothing. Right. But in that moment, high school and your friends and what was going on felt like your entire existence from now on.
Yep.
And I think that's what happens with
Fast times at Ridgemont High.
Yeah. Dude. But that's what happens with this is you have this just crisis of tearing apart of your world. So you go in and you start having lawyers and all this involvement from the legal side, And in that moment, that feels like everything. It feels like that's how it's always going to be. You're going to be up to your eyeballs in all of this crap. But what happens is eventually these lawyers go away.
Yes.
Eventually. I mean, for most people.
Unless you don't pay them, then they sue you for fees.
But you do have people that have recurrences and end up back in court multiple times every year and all this kind of thing. But for the vast majority of us, you know, you might have a couple hearings after the divorce that involve the kids or something if the kids are really young when it starts. But at some point, all of those lawyers go away, and then you're still left with your life.
Right.
And so if you've given everything over to your legal strategy and to your attorneys, and you haven't thought through how all that is going to impact your life and your lifestyle and everything moving forward, then you've done yourself a huge disservice, because that legal part is the blip on the radar.
Right.
And the long term.
That's high school.
That's
in
high
your
school.
analogy. Right.
In my analogy. And the life part of it is the thing that's going to be there, that's going to stick, that's going to be ongoing when the attorneys are gone and the kids are grown and the whole thing. Yeah. Sometimes you have these thoughts like, I wish I hadn't been with this person, or I wish I hadn't done this, or I hadn't done that. And I can remember having some of those thoughts at the time, but I will tell you something, that after my grandkids arrived especially and gave me that different perspective, I don't have that. Right. I don't have that wish anymore, because it wouldn't be any of them.
Right.
You know, if it hadn't been him, it wouldn't have been my sons, and it wouldn't have been who I love also, and I'm glad that it was them too. But you start to have more appreciation, you know, as you get older and that new life comes in. And when I was going through the divorce, I wasn't thinking about grandkids. I mean, my kids were 11 and 15. Mm-hmm. That wasn't even really a thought in my head.
Yeah.
You know, but you fast forward and it's like, you know, it could have not been my ex-husband, but then it wouldn't be any of these people in my life that I love so much. It wouldn't be any of that.
So I guess the moral of the story is, don't let your attorney put your life in their box. Force your attorney to put his or her litigation into your box.
Anyway, if you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to hit like and subscribe so that you get more videos like this as they're released. If you're listening to the podcast episode, please also hit like and subscribe so that you also get notified of new episodes as they're released. And thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
We'll grow in number, fueled by them to see the horizon, turn us